Well, it's sport, as I said. Look, we'll be throwing in a bit of sport twice a week. Sport with a difference, though. Australians love their sport, and let's be honest, with a lot of the rubbish going on, it's been great to see some racing and football, hasn't it? But today, you'll love this, a bit of history. Can you believe Boris Becker won 6 Grand Slam titles, 3 Wimbledons, 2 Australian Opens and 1 US Open from West Germany. He's now 52. One of his coaches actually was an Australian, Bob Brett. But it's 35 years today since what I regarded, this will get a pub argument up, as almost impossible. A 17-year-old, Boris Becker, beat the South African Kevin Curran 6-3, 6-7, 7-6, 6-4 to be the youngest ever at 17 male Grand Slam singles champion. 17 years, 7 months and 15 days. Now, that record would be broken 4 years later when Michael Chang won the French Open at 17, a couple of months younger. But John McEnroe was the defending champion in 1985. He lost to Kevin Curran in the quarterfinal. Curran then beat Jimmy Connors in the semi to become the only player to ever beat McEnroe and Connors in a Grand Slam. To be fair, Boris had an easier half in the draw, though the Swede whom he beat in the semi-final, Anders Jarrod, was the 5th seed. But it is hard to believe that Curran, the big serving South African, beat McEnroe at Wimbledon 6-2, 6-2, 6-4 in the quarters, and then thrashed Connors 6-2, 6-2, 6-1 in the semi. So for Becker at 17 to get on top of Curran in the final is astonishing. So there it is. I think the most extraordinary performance I've ever seen in sport. And that'll start some pub talk, won't it? Interestingly, Becker, you see, at 16, made the quarterfinals of the Australian Open. Well, just on tennis as well, but in a different way. In May this year, the world of tennis mourned the passing of a great Australian athlete, a great human being, a magnificent player, Ashley Cooper. He almost won a Grand Slam in 1958. He missed out on the French, beaten in the semi-finals by the Chilean Luis Ayala in 5 sets. Actually, Ashley, if I remember rightly, led 2 sets to love. But then he beat the Queenslander Mal Anderson, or he previously beat Mal Anderson to win the Australian Open in straight sets. Then he beat Neil Fraser. Fraser, good evening. I know Fraser's watching, to win Wimbledon 3-6, 6-3, 6-4, 13-11. And he beat Malcolm Anderson to win the US Open 6-2, 3-6, 4-6, 10-8, 8-6. There's, I think that was at match point, what you're seeing there. Now, here we are. This is extraordinary. That's actually at the other end, of course. And Fraser, there we are, beaten on that point. Marvellous stuff. I think there's a match point coming up. This is it. Bang. Boom. There you are. And it's there. It's all on. Ashley was born a Victorian, became a Queenslander for nearly 50 years. He was a wonderful, distinguished and modest human being. However, not long after playing in the Davis Cup Challenge Round in December in 1958, I was there, Ashley married a beautiful young lady from Tinaroo Falls in North Queensland who happened to be crowned Miss Australia in 1957, Helen Wood. It was a chaotic day. January 2, 1959, front page. I've got the front page. You can't see this here much. This is the front page. The headlines reported that 5,000 people, this is in 1959, surrounded St Paul's Presbyterian Church in Brisbane to try to catch a glimpse of the couple. And as my old mate Jim Killen used to say, there's Ashley. Oh, great stuff. Jim Killen would say to me, if not, yeah, there they are. This was on January. Helen and the girls are watching, I know. Near riot, look at it. As the crowd mobs the couple, and there they are. Helen and Ashley. January 2, 1959, and there she is, Helen from Tinaroo Falls, a school teacher, winning Miss Australia. Ashley Cooper died after a long illness on May 22 at the age of 83. I think Helen, as I said, is watching tonight. Our thoughts are with you, Helen and the girls. And with another tennis great too, Ken Rosewall, could be called the greatest player ever. He lost his beautiful wife, Wilma, a representative player. And Ken and Wilma were married in October 1956, the previous year, in St John's Cathedral, and thousands gathered outside then to witness the ceremony. And Wilma died on April 27. On that newspaper, this is interesting, because papers were different then. This is front page stuff. And on the newspaper here, beside Helen and Ashley, on the same front page of the Courier Mail, is a story, Slasher could be a hero today. There it is. And this was in relation to the Boxing Day test at the MCG, and the Australian captain, the late Richie Benaud, was criticised for sending Slasher Mackay. He was called Slasher because he didn't belt the ball around too much, but my God, it was hard to get out. And Australia were approaching the close of play, and they'd lost Bobby Simpson and Benno for ducks. Australia crashed from 2, I think it was 2 for 255, and then to 6 for 262, 71,000 people. And Mackay and the great Alan Davison, good evening, Davo, pulled the score to 6 to 282 by the end of the day. Slasher only scored 18 runs, but it was enough to give the Australians a slight lead in the first innings. And then we went on to win the test, take a 2-0 lead, and Richie's side won the 5-test series 4-0. There we are. And we're thinking of Victorian sporting teams too, by the way, with this coronavirus stuff. They've actually had to get out of the state. So have the Melbourne Rebels have had to come north. It's an amazing mess up, isn't it, all round? But there you are. That's sport for tonight.